The 2025 NFL Draft is done. So in today's video, I want to go over some of my favorite draft classes of the 2025 NFL Draft. Subscribe and like the video if you guys enjoy. Let's hop into it. So these are going to be in no particular order. It's just going to be simply draft classes that I think did a really good job. And we are going to begin with the Arizona Cardinals. I really liked this draft class. For starters, getting Walter Nolen in round 1 was great value. I thought Walter Nolen was arguably worthy of like a top 12 pick. He ultimately went to 16, which I thought was a great spot for him. And truth be told, I think it's a great location for him to go to, not only just because Arizona is a good team right now, but they also have a lot of veteran experience in that defensive line room to kind of guide and help Walter Nolen as he transitions from college to the NFL, as well as there were maturity questions, so now he kind of gets those sorted out as well. For Walter Nolen, he's a very high upside player who can be a good pass rusher as well as very good against the run. So just in general, I really like what the Arizona Cardinals did with this one. I feel like this was a really solid pick, but then they did something even arguably better in round 2. Now granted, we have to put a huge little question mark to this pick because we just simply do not know the status health-wise of Will Johnson. But if Will Johnson is somehow able to get back into that 2023 form and stay healthy, this is a cornerback 1 for 99% of rosters. And for Arizona, a team that already has a good amount of bodies in the cornerback room but is just really lacking a true difference maker, this could be a really good location for Will Johnson to go to, maybe sit for a year and get healthy and kind of regrow everything and get back to basics. And then in 2026 or even potentially next year, he steps in and could be arguably the cornerback 1 for this roster. Again, they already have a number of decent cornerbacks. It's not like this team was super desperate to get a cornerback 1 or just a cornerback in general, but man, they get a potential CB1 in round 2. Somebody who, had he been healthy throughout the process and was able to go at full speed, there would be probably no complaints of him going top 15. So the fact that they got him at 15th in the second round is just really good value. Then Jordan Burch, a really big defensive lineman with some versatility. Not sure if he's ever going to be a super productive player, but I could easily see him being a part of the defensive line rotation, being good against the run, and maybe giving something against the pass. And then the rest of the draft, I think they kind of hit on a few prospects, you know, Cody Simon, Denzel Burke, Hayden Conner, and Keaton Crawford. A lot of really talented players. Hayden Conner from Texas played a lot of years, so there's some experience there. Denzel Burke, maybe in theory, should be a better player than what he actually is, but who knows? Maybe you can get the best out of him. And then Cody Simon's been productive, and Keaton Crawford has been a good player for Nevada and at one point Texas. So just in totality, I feel like this was a really solid class for Arizona. You bring in what I think is a home run hit in Walter Nolen, a potential home run hit in Will Johnson. I think Jordan Burch will have a rotational spot, and maybe Cody Simon or Hayden Conner can get some playing time on this team. So in totality, really good class for the Arizona Cardinals. If I had to give it a grade, it'd probably be somewhere in the A's. The next is, surprisingly, the Dallas Cowboys. Now, you guys know I am somewhat of a Cowboys fan, so I might have an innate bias towards this, but basically everyone that I've talked to has loved the Dallas Cowboys draft class, so I don't feel like I'm being too biased with this one. Now, admittedly speaking, the draft class kind of felt a little shaky after the Tyler Booker pick, and it felt like the entire internet was roasting the Dallas Cowboys for, oh, why'd you take Tyler Booker? And admittedly speaking, if you guys watched my reaction to day 1 of the draft, it was one of my lower graded picks of all the picks. Now, I look kind of back on that and I say, you know what? Maybe I should have been a bit more optimistic about the pick because, hey, you now have 3 or I guess 4 super young offensive linemen to build for the rest of the foreseeable future. Guyton will play tackle, Tyler Smith at guard, Cooper Beebe at center, and then probably Tyler Booker at right guard. And of course, we'll see what happens with Terrence Steele. But just in general, he's a plug-and-play starter immediately, physical, good attitude, veteran, or I shouldn't say veteran, but leader in the locker room type of guy. And as time does go on, I think him, Tyler Smith, they're going to become the identity of this offense. And if it works out, I think it can be a good pick. I'm not going to ignore the fact, though, that you really can't run a lot of zone with this guy or else it's going to really be a tough one. And I don't think he offers too much versatility. I think he's basically an exclusive guard. So there are some limitations with this pick. I don't love the value, but I'm okay with the pick because of what they did later in the draft. Because in round 2, Donovan Ezaraku, like he's probably going to be your starting edge rusher next to Micah Parsons. I thought he was a late to mid first round pick. He goes middle of the second round. And I think that is not just awesome value, but just an awesome player to add to a team that maybe could have used a bit more juice off the edge. Listen, you lose DeMarcus Lawrence. Sam Williams is coming off a major injury. Marshawn Nealon showed some flashes, but was injured throughout his rookie season. And of course, Dante Fowler's also there, but you needed that young piece that you felt confident moving forward with. And if I'm Dallas, assuming Sam Williams kind of comes back to form, you feel really good about your edge rushers for the foreseeable future, and Donovan Ezeraku likely will be a big reason for it. Just a really good pass rusher that can get to the quarterback. And then Savon Ravel. I mean, hey, in the third round, I know corner was a big need for Dallas. They get somebody who, in kind of a lot of ways, looks pretty similar to Trevon Diggs in terms of the body size, the long arms, the lankiness, but also the ball hawking ability. Like Savon Ravel is definitely somebody who can do that. Now, Ravel is coming off an ACL injury, hence why he fell to the third round. So for a Dallas Cowboys team that already has an injury-prone Diggs, an injury-prone Bland, this could be a little bit concerning, but if it works out, which I think it will, then, man, you have potentially 3 cornerbacks that can all start for your team. I kind of wonder which one will move inside to play nickel. If I had to assume, probably Deron Bland, because I think he's played that before. Then in round 5, they went with Jaden Blue. Admittedly speaking, I'm not the highest on Jaden Blue, but, man, he's got game-wrecking speed. He's also a pretty good pass catcher, so I think there's some upside there. Shamar James, a developmental linebacker who probably will play special teams. And then down the board, some depth, rotational pieces. I do like the Phil Maffa pick, though. His skill set, I think, would work quite nicely with Jaden Blue. So just in totality, thought this was a really solid draft class for the Dallas Cowboys. You got some needs, you got some wants. They didn't get a receiver, though, and I have heard the Dallas Cowboys are working on something, so we'll kind of keep an eye out on that. I would have liked to have seen potentially a receiver in round 5, but we'll have to wait and see how that works out for them. Next up is going to be the Carolina Panthers. Now, I got to be honest with you, after the Ted McMillan pick, I was a little bit concerned, but then the team just proceeded to absolutely cook for the rest of the draft. I really like basically every single pick they did. Now, there was one kind of questionable pick, especially given the value, but man, Nick Scourton in round 2, like I genuinely think that he could be a starting edge rusher for this team. Like his upside is very good while also having a very safe floor. Big body edge rusher he just looks mean and nasty, who can get some pressure on the quarterback while also being a pretty good run stuffer. I do want to go back to Ted McMillan. I haven't talked about him yet, but admittedly speaking, when it came to that pick, I thought it was going to be Jalen Walker, and when it was Ted McMillan, I was a little surprised, especially with how bad the defense was last year, and I was a little bit worried about this class. But then Nick Scourton in round 2, Princely Omamielin in round 3, and I felt a lot better about the Ted McMillan pick. I mean, listen, Ted is likely going to end up being their wide receiver 1. You pair him with Leggett, Thielen, and all those other guys they have on that roster. I think there's a lot of different pieces to work with there, and I feel like you feel pretty confident now that you have sort of that finishing piece within the receiving core. Now, Ted is not somebody who's going to be Calvin Johnson. I know Panthers fans or just fans in general are going to see his size and length and say, hey, that's a 50-50 ball winner. Throw that ball up and he's going to win it. And while he will win some of those, hopefully the Carolina Panthers will know how to utilize his skill set, because, man, he's just a different receiver for what his body type is. But if they do figure it out, which I'm sure they will, they have a great coach, I think it's going to work out quite nicely. And I think this team very well just kind of secured their wide receiver room, which was a little bit questionable heading into the draft. I talked about Nick Scourton. I love that pick. I think he'll start for this year. But Princey Omamielin, man, hey, this is not a bad player. He could have went round 1 or round 2, and I would not have been shocked. He has a variety of pass rush moves. He's a little bit more nuanced than a lot of other players right now in their position. 6'4", 244, so he's well-sized, well-equipped. He just can win in a number of different ways, and while maybe he's not the greatest against the run right now, I feel like this is also a guy that potentially could pair opposite of Nick Scourton on the edge rushing room. Now, I don't think Nick Scourton or Princely will start day 1, but I think it's definitely a good shot they start at some point this season, especially Nick Scourton. And then from Princely, he's probably going to be more of like a third down guy who's just, hey, pin your ears back and go get the quarterback. But if you get that in round 3, you'll definitely take it. So that's 3 impactful players just within the beginning of the draft. Round 4, that's the questionable one for me, getting Trevor Etienne. Admittedly, I like Trevor Etienne, but man, you already have 3 running backs. Jonathan Brooks is obviously injured, but you think you have a future with him there. You brought in Rico Dowell, and you already have Chuba Hubbard, so maybe they can use him more as a receiving back, but I just didn't get that pick at all. Maybe a special teams guy. Lathan Ransom, hey, he's just a really good safety prospect that, you know, well-sized, can move quite nicely. He can track the ball well. So you bring him in. I don't know if he'll start, but for sure we'll probably have a role on this roster. Cam Jackson, the nose tackle or defensive tackle for Florida. We'll see if he can get some rotations in. Mitchell Evans was kind of a weird one, but I think he might be a bit more of like your inline blocking tight end, so we'll kind of wait on that. And then, hey, Jimmy Horn Jr. I know we all talked about potential upside picks. Jimmy Horn Jr. has a lot of upside. I don't know if he'll ever, reach that upside, but getting him in the last pick of the 6th round, or I guess the 32nd pick of the 6th round, whatever that might be. Yes, he's undersized, but man, he can absolutely run. He can move, he can get open. And for a guy like Bryce Young, I could see somebody like Jimmy Horn becoming a really good piece for this offense. And I don't know if he'll be a wide receiver 1, 2, 3, or even 4, but I think he might be in on some certain packages. And I could see Bryce Young really liking that connection between him and Horn. So in totality, I thought this was a really nice draft. I thought they shored up their offense by getting a top tier receiver. They helped their defense by bringing in 2 legit edge rushers as well as a safety. It's not a finished product. It's still a lot of work needs to be done. But a team last year that won, 5 games, I could see probably winning now 7 or 8, and then really taking that big step forward in 2026. So nice draft for the Carolina Panthers. I'm very happy to say that they did a solid job this one. Moving over to the New England Patriots, I thought they absolutely killed this draft. I loved a lot of their picks. Obviously, Will Campbell was their first round pick, and listen, it was just the right pick. And honestly, it wasn't the flashiest pick, and I wasn't going to give it like an A+ or anything until his interview, where the dude is like telling the world that he's willing to die and kill for Drake May. And I was like, hey, you got me sold. So I like that one a lot. Just a versatile piece, can play guard, can play tackle. I think they'll start him off at left tackle, see how it works. If it works out, great. If not, you put him inside to play guard. He'll be a Pro Bowl guard or center prospect. So that's great right there. TreVeyon Henderson, man, you want to talk about home run hit, but not just a home run hitter. This dude could genuinely block and save a quarterback's ass. Like on 3rd down, when it's 3rd and 15 and you want your running back to chip an edge or to go out there and put his life on the line for a quarterback, that's what TreVeyon Henderson does. Like, he will do that. And that's a really nice piece to have, especially next to Ramondre Stevenson, who isn't necessarily the shiftiest guy in the world. You kind of have this nice combination of a bit more of a bruiser style guy and Ramondre, and then a more of a swifty, maybe more of a receiving back who can also do some things underneath. And it's just being a home run hitter in TreVeyon Henderson. And then you pair all that up with another offensive player with Kyle Williams, who I think is just an absolute burner on the outside, can create so much separation with his speed, with his route running, and he's very sure-handed. So that right there is 3 hits right there. And then in the back end of round 3, you get Jared Wilson, who I don't know if he'll start day 1, but I think is a very high upside center prospect that, man, he can move, he's athletic, he's strong. He just kind of has to get the game down in terms of like inside the brain. Like, he has everything else physically. It just kind of comes down to, can he be smart enough for the position? Because the center is the one position that has to do a lot of work pre-snap and post-snap. And if you're not smart at center, which I'm not calling Jared dumb or anything like that, I'm just saying he has to get more experience with it because he's only been a 1-year starter. But it could definitely be a home run hit right there. So the way I look at it, Will Campbell will start for this team. TreVeyon will likely be RB2, but will definitely get a lot of snaps. Kyle Williams, I think, steps in probably as wide receiver 3 or 4. And then Jared Wilson, again, probably won't start day 1, but I wouldn't be surprised if by the end of the season he's the starter, or by heading into next year he's the starter. So within the first 4 picks, I think they have 4 impactful players. And then down the board, Joshua Farmer from Florida State. I love that pick. This dude is a legit run stuffer, can do some other things too. And then Braden Swinson in round 5. Listen, I might have been a little bit higher on Braden Swinson than a lot of other people, but I know some people who are also very high on him. I would have had Braden Swinson as a lock for day 2, more specifically a round 2 prospect. I made the case in my podcast, by the way, go ahead and check it out, 1st and 10. I made the case that if he went late round 1, I would not have been pissed off about it. And he goes round 5. So that tells you how high I am on Braden Swinson. Braden Swinson, dog, like, he's just a disruptor. He can get in the backfield. He's decent against the run. Is he a nuanced player quite yet? Not necessarily, but there's still a lot to unlock here. And you get him in round 5. And I think he can very much legitimately become a starting edge rusher for this team within the first couple years. So while he may not be an impactful player day 1, I think by 2-3 years down the line, he definitely could be a part of a serious rotation of pass rushers. And then, hey, you get a punter or kicker in Andres Borregales. Not sure how to pronounce that. I'll be honest with you, did not watch any punter or kicker film. Hot take, did not do that. You also get a long snapper, so that's also fun. And you had, I believe, Mr. Irrelevant in Kobe Minor. So just a fun draft for the Patriots. I thought they absolutely killed it. Their offense looks significantly better. And defensively, they already did a lot of work in free agency by adding some pieces that I feel like, hey, this team could really take a big step forward next year, especially if Drake May and the coaching staff mesh. I'll be honest with you, they won 4 games last year. Wouldn't be shocked if they doubled it, or maybe even better. So just keep an eye out on them. Next, I gotta talk about the New York Giants. Now, admittedly speaking, not the biggest fan of Jackson Dart, but I thought they killed the rest of their draft. We'll start off with the Abdul Carter pick. Listen, Abdul Carter was my 2nd-ranked prospect in this year's draft class. You get him at 3. There's great value there. I don't know what happens with Kayvon Thibodeau. To be honest with you, I don't really care. I never thought Kayvon was that great specifically. So Brian Burns one side, Abdul Carter, Dexter in the middle, and you also paired it with Darius Alexander in round 3, which we'll get to here in a second. And that very well could end up being one of the best defensive lines in the entire NFL. Abdul Carter's legit. He's going to be probably a 10 plus sack a season type guy. He's probably going to be in some Pro Bowls, some All Pros. Pair that with Brian Burns, who's already been an established edge rusher who can get a lot of sacks and make a lot of havoc. So just a nice pickup. Admittedly, it wasn't their biggest need, but it was kind of a tough place for them to be at. And they traded back into the first round and didn't really give up too much for it. I think they only gave up a 3rd round pick this year and a 3rd round pick next year. So it wasn't that big of a deal. Also, they gave up their 2nd for the swap, obviously. But just in general, it wasn't like a huge trade or anything like that. They didn't have to give up like a 1st round pick like Atlanta did, which that was stupid. But in general, they took Jackson Dart. And I got to be honest with you, not a fan of Jackson Dart. I have not been on the Dart train. I've been saying that I would not take him rounds 1 or 2, maybe round 3, but definitely not rounds 1 or 2. Maybe late round 2 you can buy me into, but I just never thought he was a legit prospect that you had to get. But the Giants were one of those teams that I kind of would give a bit of a pass with because of how kind of desperate they sort of are. This is a team that has been rocking some bad quarterback play the past couple years, and it wasn't getting better with Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston. So what do? They got their young guy. And in some ways, this will buy Brian Daboll and Joe Schoen time. We'll see if it ends up working out and if Jackson Dart actually gets playing time this year. But I at least think it buys them time. So I understand the pick. I don't love the pick. I would have preferred Shedeur Sanders. Obviously, he fell a lot later than expected. So maybe our 1st round was out of the equation. But if they took him in like round 4, I think I would have been fine with it. So yeah, I just was not the biggest fan of the Jackson Dart pick. But I can definitely understand why they did so. But the rest of the draft was really solid. So it doesn't tick me off too bad that they took Jackson Dart in round 1 because Darius Alexander, I know he's an older prospect who they got in round 3. But man, he's an impact player. He was one of my top defensive linemen in this year's draft class. He's just a day 1 potential starter out of Toledo, and you get that in the 3rd round. That's just awesome value. Good against the run, disruptive in the pass. Then you get a fun player in Cam Scatabo, who, man, I thought in round 4 he'd be gone by this point. But he made it to round 4, and hey, this dude, for all the flaws that I think he might have as a player, like no, he's not a burner, he's not the shiftiest guy in the world, but he's just a guy who will run through every single arm tackle and make life miserable for opposing teams. You pair that with Tyrone Tracy, who's a bit more of a burner, a shiftier athlete, and it's just like the perfect spot for him to go to, especially now behind an offensive line that looks a little bit better, at least on paper, compared to, previous years. Obviously, last year wasn't spectacular, but it's good enough now to where I think a guy like Scatabo could find success. Pair that with Marcus Mbao, who I think was I'm surprised he fell to the 5th round. I thought he would have went a lot higher. A little bit undersized, but can play inside to play guard. He's just a good athlete. And then Thomas Fidone and Corey Black were just kind of 2 throw it in their picks. And I think you got definitely 3 potential starters, with Cam Scatabo being a legitimate playmaker on this offense, and then Marcus Mbao potentially being a swing tackle, a starting guard. We'll have to wait and see on that one. But potentially 5 impact players, but more realistically probably 3 to 4 impact players. So solid draft for the New York Giants. I thought this was a really nice offseason for them and just in general. And frankly, I kind of feel like Joe Schoen and Brian Daboll have done some really good work at every single position not named quarterback. And I thought they've really rebuilt this roster quite nicely, just not with the right quarterback. So I expect the Giants to be better next year, especially if Dart or Russell or Jameis can help this team actually elevate the roster. I expect probably 7 wins next year, which is definitely not a bad thing. And I think once Jackson takes the reins of the offense over, we'll see how things go. Next, I want to talk about the Kansas City Chiefs. I thought this team really needed a nice draft class, and I think they did a really solid job here. In round 1, obviously they took Josh Simmons. Now, I don't know what the medicals look like for Josh Simmons. If the medicals checked out, he probably would have been a top 15 pick. I'm sure the medicals were a little worrying, so that's kind of why he ultimately fell. But if we assume the medicals end up panning out and he's okay in the long run, then man, I think he's just going to be an impactful starter for this team. They did a good job of, bringing in some pieces like Jalen Moore in the offseason, and they drafted somebody last year. But now I feel like you feel pretty confident that you can kind of put together a solid enough offensive line for Patrick Mahomes. I don't know how the offensive line is going to look like, but I think they now have the necessary pieces to really figure it out. And I think Josh Simmons, if healthy, could probably be your starting tackle of the future. So you feel really good about that. Round 2, you get a legit pass rushing nose tackle or offensive lineman in Omar Norman-Lott, who, man, listen, he just didn't play a lot for Tennessee, but when he did, he was constantly disrupting things. He's excellent in pass rush, and I think he has a decent floor to be a solid run stuffer too. And you pair that up with Chris Jones, you feel really confident that that duo right there could just cause a lot of havoc on interior offensive lines. Ashton Gillott in round 3 admittedly wasn't my favorite pick. He's just a really big edge rusher that I just don't know if he has the bend or athleticism to really create much pressure off the edge. But I think as a run stuffer, there will be a good floor there, as well as he can give you some juice as a pass rusher as well. Noah Williams in round 3, maybe a slight bit early for me, but I don't hate the pick at all. He's a high upside cornerback with a lot to untap. He could probably play outside corner, which would put McDuffie back in the nickel or the slot, and just think it's a nice pick. We'll see if he starts year one, but I think it could definitely work out quite nicely. Jalen Royals in round 4, probably not their biggest need, but depending on what Rashee Rice injury looks like, he probably can play in that similar role. I was kind of hoping for maybe a bit more of like a bigger body downfield playmaker, kind of like what DeAndre Hopkins was kind of supposed to be, but they didn't really have that, so they kind of just doubled down to what they already have, which is sort of smaller, skinnier slot guys, and then Xavier Worthy can, burn deep. So not my favorite pick, but definitely a good player, which is all that matters. And then Jeffrey Bassa is a good player, a little bit undersized at the linebacker spot. He's what, 6'1", 232. I guess not undersized, but a little bit shorter. But yeah, good player, good value in round 5. And then Brashard Smith in round 7. Hey, he's just a good player. He can run. He can absolutely move. And to get him in the last round, I think he very well could end up being the starting running back for this team or somebody opposite of Isaiah Pacheco. Like, they just did not have a burner in their backfield. They consistently have guys who can just win and create, small gains underneath and just kind of push in piles. Brashard Smith is your big-time playmaker who can just make massive plays. So I like the pick. I like the draft in general. It's not like the best draft of this class, but I think it's a good, solid draft class that this Chiefs team kind of needed because they were starting to lose a lot of depth, and I feel like they did a nice job of sort of fixing some of those little issues they might have had. But the last team I'll talk about in this video, and you guys let me know if there's any other team you guys want to hear from. Just let me know your favorite team in the comment section below, and I'll let you know what I thought about their team and just in general what grade I would typically give it. For the New York Jets, though, I love what they did. Build in the trenches in round 1 and just add some pieces to positions of need in the later draft. Obviously, the Armand Membu pick he's going to be your long-term right tackle. Pair that with Olu Fashanu, you get your 2 tackles of the future. It's just a really nice pick. Not the flashiest pick, but you had to sort of expect that with Aaron Glenn, who's now coming from Detroit. Want to build the trenches up. I think this is a great way to start off your offensive line with Olu Fashanu and Armand Membu. You now have a young core to build with for the foreseeable future. And Mason Taylor. Hey, this team really needed a tight end really badly. And Mason Taylor steps in there and just can be kind of a do-it-all tight end. He's a decent blocker. He's good in the pass game. Is he ever going to be like a top, 5 tight end in the league? Probably not, but I could see him being considered like top 15, top 10. And if you have a top 15 player in any position, you'll definitely take that, especially in round 2. Azariah Thomas from Florida State, I like him a lot. Long, lengthy corner, can make plays when the ball's in the air. Just a sticky press man corner at times, can also do some things in zone. He's definitely not the smoothest athlete or the greatest athlete, but pair that with Sauce Gardner, I like what you get there. Arian Smith from Georgia, man, if he could just catch the football, this dude probably would have been like a day 2 pick, but he just can't catch anything. He's undersized a little bit too, a little bit lankier, not the biggest, bulkiest guy in the world. Man, he could just run though. He could just fly. He can create separation with his speed. It's just unfortunate because he just simply put has no ball skills. And if he had any lick of ball skills, if he could just catch the football, he'd be a great player. So will he play for this team? I think he will, just because the Jets don't really have a true wide receiver too. And he could be somebody that legitimately stretches the field vertically. And I think given some opportunities, he will make some plays. I don't see him being a super high impact player, but I think he definitely can go in there and get some run. Just kind of comes down to if he can catch the football. Malachi Moore from Bama has a lot of experience in the backfield, so I think you're probably going to get some run from him too. You lost a lot of pieces in your safety room, and Malachi Moore probably comes in as a depth option, but we'll see if he can maybe form a role that gets him into a starting role. And then your 2 Miami guys in round 5, we'll see if those guys can do much of anything. Just in general, really solid draft class. You shored up your offensive line. You got yourself a starting tight end. I think you got yourself your cornerback 2, maybe 3. We'll see how that works out. And I think Arian Smith can be somewhat of a playmaker for this offense. Same with Malachi Moore. So I think you're getting 3 to 4 potential difference makers on this roster. Not high impact players, but potential difference makers. So you guys let me know in the comment section below what you guys thought of these specific teams and your specific team as well. You guys can let me know, and I'll tell you guys what I think about them. If you enjoyed, hit the like and subscribe button. Love you guys. Peace.